And welcome everyone to this budget meeting, November 25th, 2024. And we'll call this meeting to order and ask everyone to make sure that their cell phones are turned off or on mute. We welcome our members of staff that are here this evening to give us information that will help us make the best decisions for South Huron. And we welcome those that are participating from home on Zoom. And we'll ask that Mr. Sue Carlson, recommendation number 2, please.
Through the mayor, I would advise that we do have an updated budget impacts and priorities page that will be uploaded to the agenda following the meeting. So the resolution that South Huron Council approves the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Is there a mover, please? Councillor Neeb, second by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Here's a 7. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures at this time? And not seeing any, move on to item number 4 and turn it over to staff to proceed.
To the mayor, I would ask the acting treasurer to provide an overview. Thanks.
Apologies for the late notice of the change to the budget impact and priorities. We did receive the final tax roll. So this is now based on the final tax roll as received. And it also then includes the growth that we received for the tax roll of 128,850. Other changes that you will note is we received information with regards to the benefits for health and dental. So there is a small change in the wages and benefits amount there. It's now, as shown, 145,151. We also now have the draft budgets for the both conservation authorities. So that number has been updated for the 14,910. These numbers are highlighted in green. Sorry, I should have said that. So you can see them in green on there. And then for insurance, we received a 5% estimated increase. So that is 14,170 is the levy impact of that. And then also the baseline capital, that number has been updated to include the pedestrian crossover project. And that was the case on the sheet you had before, it just wasn't highlighted in green. So that number hasn't changed from what was in the sheet that you received as part of the budget. So 234,712 is the levy impact of the capital. And then based on the change that we received with the tax roll, you'll see the rates at the bottom have changed. So for rural, you're looking at a tax rate increase of 0.84% and for urban 2.5%.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Not seeing any. Okay, Councillor Neeb, go ahead, then Councillor Dietrich.
Just more of a comment. This is really positive news, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else that any other projects that we should be adding into the budget, considering we come in significantly lower than we had first projected.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sue Carlson, comment?
Through the mayor, one of the options that you could consider is adding in an additional percentage to the tax levy for asset management. Currently, it's a 0.25%, so that might be a consideration of council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dietrich had a comment.
Thank you to the chair. This insurance 5% increase, does that cover buildings, vehicles, equipment, everything right across the board?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, it does.
Okay. Great, thank you. Anything further on what our CEO was mentioning? Councillor Neeb and Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering, we've got a couple other discussion points here with the rural roads and the OPP stabilization. Depending on how those discussions go, then we could maybe talk about if there's some other, I agree that there may be some other considerations that we might need to look at, but depending on how these other items go before we maybe decide on anything.
We can
possible.
Bring that up under next steps, perhaps.
Yeah.
Very well. Any other comments at this time? Okay, not seeing any this time. Back to staff then.
To the mayor, are we then down to referred resolutions for discussion?
Members of council, comments? It appears we are. Yep.
Okay, I can read the recommendation. That South Huron Council receives a staff memo, gravel for rural roads. On the capital project 2025 TS 11 roller attachment be included in the proposed 2025 budget.
And a mover, please. Moved by Counselor Neeb, seconded by Counselor Vaughn. Any discussion? Deputy, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I must have missed something. That gravel, it came back that we didn't need any more gravel. So then we're moving that to the roller. Is that, have I got that correct?
That appears to be so within the recommendation.
Okay,
Do you want to, Mr. Timmermans can speak to it if you like?
Sure,
Mr.
please.
Timmermans, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Finch. The additional gravel that's in the budget for this year, the increase will put us up into the amount that we need. This year, the roller would be an asset for the gravel roads, just not for this year, but for foreseeable years, and will definitely help out with the maintenance.
If I may, Shane, would it be accurate to say that'd be a labor saving device also?
Correct.
Thank you, Counselor Oak.
Yeah, so I guess when we were presented the operating budget, the gravel was based, I thought, and I had misheard, was more on the price of the gravel going up versus actually extra tons. And when we discussed further, I guess I thought that we were thinking that we need to put additional gravel on the roads and not just the price increase. So I'm confused a little bit.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So during the years of COVID, the prices went skyrocket. So what we had to do is decrease the gravel because it was too late to increase. So now we've been playing catch up. This year here, things are looking a lot stabler in the market. So this additional funds should get us to the point now this year.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Dietrich.
Thank you to the mayor. This roller you're speaking of, that it's not on the 25 budget or like this year, or how is it?
Through your, Mayor Finch, yes, it would be.
Okay. Is there any way that a man can see this thing and talk to somebody that's had one before? Like, I understand a roller is a good idea because I hook one on behind the cultivator and it does the job I want it to do. So I'm not saying your thing isn't going to do the job it's wanted to do, but I kind of like to have somebody have a look at it and ask a few questions from an operator.
Through your, Mayor Finch, Blue Water has one, which I was involved in purchasing that one when I was there. Perth South has one. There's multiple municipalities that have them and do like the way that they function.
Thank you, Counselor Oak.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Shane, for the idea. I think it's a great idea as well. One question I have is in the report itself, or the actual budget request form, it talks about taking this out of the tax levy, and I wondered about the transportation capital reserve instead. Based on the significant reserve that's sitting there for transportation. It's the reserve is, now I know that there's some year-end adjustments that have got to come out of there and different things, but the sheets that we had, it was over $6 million sitting there in the transportation reserve. So I just wondered if that needed to come out of the levy or the reserve.
Who would like to take that? Mr. Sokol.
Through the mayor, I can start. I think it was based to be put out of the tax levy because we've already met the percentage for what is to be taken out of reserves. So if council does decide that they want to take it out of the reserves, then that could be added to the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. All right, thanks very much, Shane. If there's no further discussion, we have a mover and a seconder. Counselor Dietrich, you have a question?
We talking now about this crosswalk thing? Is it on this?
That's coming up.
next? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on 5.1 at this time? Okay, not seeing. We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. 5.2. Sorry, where we at? Ms. Sue Carlson?
Okay.
Go ahead.
5.2, but prior to this, perhaps the acting treasurer could provide us maybe an update as to where we are with the tax impact. With the roller.
Through you, Mayor, the tax rate increase with the addition of the roller to the tax levy would be rural 1.34% and urban 2.94%.
Okay, thank you. Deputy, go ahead.
Could you state the urban again, please?
Through you, Mayor, urban is 2.94%.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay. Back to staff. Oh, Councillor Vaughn. Your microphone, please.
Apologies. Just wondering if I might make a comment about the Main Street pedestrian crosswalk. So it's just a thought. I know I brought this up at the time when we first talked about this at a council meeting, when we got a staff report. And I just would only like to say at this time that as we go and proceed through with engineering, I'm asking that we kind of mention to the engineers that we're looking for solutions to preserve our existing bump out and the flower beds. Only because we didn't pay for all of that enhancement all that long ago. I'd like to see us maintain that asset if at all possible. And try to work with what we have when we talk to the engineers. That's a comment.
Okay, very well. Do you want a comment from staff or just?
Well, I see Mr. Giberson shaking his head and a thumbs up as to take that into account. So that's
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Yep. And Councillor Dietrich, did you have anything you wish to speak to on this?
Thank you to the chair. I don't agree with this wind turbine donation to the thing in the first place. We're talking about gravel here a minute ago, and I did look that up, and we're quite able to put a few dollars towards that gravel through the wind turbine fees or whatever they give you. I'm wondering why we shouldn't be doing more of that. Just the taxpayer can pick this up. And another thought I have, that more of this turbine money should be going to the Dashwood Fire Station. Why should be paying more off than you can? You have less interest to pay then. My thoughts only. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comments from members of council? Thank you. Thank you for your comment, Councillor Dietrich. Duly noted. Very well. Moving right along. Is there any other comments at this point? Okay, go back to staff. Unless we have something else.
5.2, the OPP stabilization fund. This is referral resolution.
Councillor Oak.
I was, yeah, I'd like to discuss the resolution that was deferred to this meeting. I guess in light of a 17% increase in the OPP funding model this year, I guess my thoughts were there's probably no other, we haven't seen since I've been on council a year of such an increase, and probably no better time to maybe use the stabilization reserve to minimize the increase. So that's where I was proposing to use some of the funds out of the reserve to maybe minimize that that increase in the OPP funding. So that's, again, I think I'd like to further discuss that and see if there's any other council members that have any comments on that.
Open to the floor. Councillor Vaughn.
Yes, so I'd like to see a few different kind of what if scenarios in terms of if we were to take 100,000 from the OPP stabilization reserve, or 50 or 75, or just a few, just to sort of see what that might do to the rate. That's kind of one thing that's on my mind. Secondly, I'm also thinking, and it kind of goes along with what Councillor Dietrich was bringing up about the Dashwood Fire Hall as well. Is there a possibility to take some money from one reserve, like the OPP reserve, and move it over towards the potential Dashwood Fire Hall? I'm just not too sure on the accounting there, and if maybe that's another way we could look at maximizing things all the way around.
Okay, go ahead, Erin.
Through you, Mayor Finch. The OPP stabilization reserve is to provide funding to minimize the impact of contract renewal costs. So moving it to another reserve, I don't believe is what the purpose of the reserve is, but using it due to the increase of the OPP would be applicable. I can give you what the adjusted rates would be taking 100,000 from the OPP stabilization if you want to hear, if you want those. So this is with the roller included and using the OPP stabilization at 100,000, the tax rate increase would be 0.66% rural and 1.71% urban.
Okay, thank you. Comments from members of council? Councillor Oak.
So just to clarify, so if we were to take 100,000 out of the stabilization reserve to offset the funding, the 300,000 that extra, that the OPP model, and then decided to do another project, is that a possibility that maybe I'm just asking the question on that.
Go ahead, Erin.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, that would be applicable. Yep.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, and then also go.
Just to follow up on that. So then if it were to be used towards, so if we wanted to use it towards the fire hall project, how would that work? Or would it have to go into the fire reserve because we don't officially have a project? I guess I'm just wondering logistically how that would work.
Go ahead, Erin.
Through you, Mayor, we wouldn't be able to put it directly into the reserve. We would put it towards the project when we work through the numbers of the project, we could use that.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So it would just go into the working fund then, that 100,000 from the reserve to the working fund reserve, the 100,000? Or it goes against the police budget first?
Yeah, through you. It's not that we would be able to go directly from the reserve. I think what you're indicating is you would then want to increase the levy. So we would be putting levy dollars towards the Dashwood project. So we would just change the funding for the Dashwood Fire Hall to be a balance of levy and reserve funding or debt funding.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Vaughn, you had a follow-up or a question?
I had a different question, but I'm not quite sure that I understood what was just said by Aaron. My question was going back to the 100,000 that includes the roller. If we took that out of the OPP, you said 0.66 rural would be an increase for rural. And what did you say for urban?
1.71% would be urban.
And that would be an increase as well?
Those are the new, that's the tax rate. That's not, don't adjust the previous numbers with that. That's the new tax rate increase.
Oh, so it's not an increase. It's just on the rural, it would be a 0.66. And on the urban, it would be 1.71.
Correct. Instead
Ar-
of the
urban.
initial numbers that were provided.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're not
Confusing.
adding to it where this is the new adjusting numbers, yeah.
Or just changing the rate. That's what I wanted to
Very
know.
good. Any other questions at this time? Counselor Dietrich, go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. From what I've been reading, there's 400 municipalities and none of them are happy with this 17% increase that the OPP are asking for. There's a few people here going down to Roma. Do you think they'll be able to talk them into some relief?
Well, I think we mentioned earlier, Roma, the AMO is actually, and Roma Board, I believe, are actually advocating now. And there's other municipalities. There was an article just recently, Kirkland Lake, I believe it is asking for the OPP to pay for anything under any municipality under 10,000. So there's an argument also to upload the cost back to the province across the board. So there's lots of discussion going on. Who knows what will happen? What will happen? I don't know. But there will be a lot of municipalities who would like to meet with the minister about it. It was just a matter of getting in line. Any other comments at this time? Ms. Sue Wilson, go ahead.
Through the mayor, I would like to make a comment on the OPP stabilization fund. In that, since 2018, there has been no funds put in this reserve. As there's a new reconciliation, the new billing, the OPP billing method. So this is the amount that will be in this fund unless council deliberately puts money aside to be put in this reserve. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Councilor Oak.
Thank you, and thanks, Rebecca. So there's been no money put in, but no money taken out either since 2018 as well?
That's correct. There's been no change.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Vaughn.
Yeah, I just wondered, we've got $100,000 what if, pulling it out of OPP stabilization, and I'm just wondering, did you do another one for 50 or?
Through you, Mayor, if we changed it to 50,000 coming from the OPP stabilization, the increase would be rural 1% and urban 2.32%.
Thank you. Any questions regards to that? Okay, not seeing any. Councilor Neeb.
Thank you, Mayor Finch, through the chair. I'm in favor of taking 100,000 out of the OPP stabilization fund, and then if we're able to put more of the tax levy towards the Dashwood Fire Hall project, I think that's a positive move. The only other suggestion I would have too is, we've been putting 0.25% towards asset management, and I do realize, if we do put money towards the fire hall, if there's any money left over, that's going to be going into reserves. But I do think we should take an honest look at increasing that amount from 0.25 to 0.5 this year, especially if there's room. I think right now we have a very enticing tax rate, but in the coming years, we know that there's going to be a lot of spending that's going to need to be made. And I think we do need to start setting aside some money for all the various projects we have. I know that there's the fire hall. There's also some like fire trucks as well, that are in the 10-year forecast. We have a lot of roads and a lot of work that needs to be done on a number of facilities as well. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there about the 0.5 for our asset management plan.
Very good. Is there any discussion? Councillor Oak, go ahead.
I agree that we need to put something set aside or put it towards a project or something. I know in the last couple of years in the 10-year capital plan, there's been a line item for sidewalk replacement of 100,000 a year. I guess I know, you know, we can't keep kicking the stone ahead year after year, and there's, you know, so there's some things like that because they're aging and there are some sidewalks that definitely probably need to be replaced, and but that's maybe a bigger conversation of whether we replace all the existing sidewalks that we currently have, or is there another strategy that's I'm not sure if there's been any talk any further, Rebecca, on a strategy on as part of the sidewalk strategy.
Mr. Sue Carlson.
Through the mayor, I know I would get Mr. Giberson down here to speak to that following, but I think at this point anyway, we're at 5.2, the OPP stabilization fund. So if I could read back that resolution, because it seems like council wants to discuss that one first. Was moved by Councillor Oak, seconded by Councillor Vaughn and deferred. And the resolution is that 100,000 from the OPP stabilization reserve be applied towards the OPP budget line for the 2025 budget.
Okay, so we have a mover and a second there. Is that correct then? Proper.
Correct.
Thank you. And does anyone need to hear that motion read again? Is there any discussion on that? Okay, we've had lots of discussion, but if there's any more, if there's not, have a mover and a seconder, we'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Mr. Sue Carlson.
To the mayor, we have our general manager ready to speak to sidewalks, I believe.
Mr. Giberson. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Finch, members of council. If there is a desire of council to add to the budget, sidewalks are a great idea. But we are currently in the process of doing the active transportation study, and there will be recommendations that will come out of that study. So we're a little bit premature at this stage, but we are definitely, there's lots of work to be done with sidewalks. But most of our infrastructure, we're way behind. We are in severe need for road work, bridge work. So we do have one bridge repair structure that is already designed, ready to go. It's in the magnitude of 244,000 and change projected for the 2026. So that is an option for council to consider. It's easy enough for us to bring that forward. And doing rural paving is more rural paving is also another thing that can easily be accomplished in 2025. Many folks that drive some of the roads in Stephen Township, and especially if you drive south of Crediton, there's some roads in very rough condition. So that is another idea for your consideration. So if you want to add something into the budget, a bridge repair to allow us to get caught up, do some additional rural paving where the need is great. Those would be 2 ideas worth considering. Sidewalks, we're not quite ready yet to look at adding more.
Thank you, Mr. Giberson. Mr. Oak.
And thank you, Don, for the, I just noticed that it had been in the 10-year capital forecast and it had a little asterisk beside it had been taken out, and it was taken out last year as well. So that's why I just wondered. Now you mentioned bridge. Which bridge are you, was that referring to?
It's a concrete box culvert structure on Beeline, and it's located near what concession or what near Gore. Is it the one just south of Gore Road?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Need, go ahead, please.
That's the one that's Beeline 8, Highway 81 to Gore. I've got the 10-year capital forecast in front of me, so I think that's what I pulled up.
Well, then you must be correct.
Thank you, Mr. Giverson. Mr. Need, or Mr. Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so just a question, the 1/4% that we're putting towards a capital levy right now. Where does that money go towards, which department today? And if we were to up that, would that go to the same department, I guess? I
Mr.
believe it was transportation, but I guess I'm just wondering if we were to bump it up to a 0.5 point, would that go to transportation or could that go to another department? I guess I'm just wondering.
Ms. Moore?
Through you, Mayor, you're correct. It was transportation, and that was based on them having the biggest variance between requirements and what was in their reserve. I believe we could choose to put it to any of the capital reserves.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Mr. Giverson. Appreciate it. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Oak.
I guess the question would be is if with the OPP 100,000 now, stabilization reserve going towards the police budget, if we were to do that bridge project, what would that look like as far as a levy or tax rate increase?
Through you, Mayor Finch, just to confirm with Mr. Giverson, is that the Beeline repair to structure 1096 that's budgeted for 2026 at 305,800? Yeah. Okay. And would you like this with the asset management levy or of an additional 0.25% or no?
Councillor Oak, I don't think we can hear you.
Not at this time,
Thank you.
Sorry.
just by itself.
Through you, Mayor. So that would be a tax rate increase then of 3.57% rural and 4.25% urban, assuming the whole 305,800 was put to the levy.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing it this time. Is there anyone entertaining a recommendation to council? As we talked about the 0.25 increase. Councillor Oak?
I guess that's the other question. If we don't do the bridge, say if we did another 25 basis points for the capital levy or asset management levy, what would those numbers look like?
Through you, Mayor, that would be 0.92% rural and 1.93% urban. So to clarify, that's including the 100,000 OPP stabilization, the shoulder roller, and the 0.25% asset management levy.
You, any other questions? Comments? Hey, Councillor Need.
Sorry to keep making you do math. What would 0.5 look like? 0.5 basis points?
On the asset management.
Correct, yes.
Through you, Mayor, that would be 1.18% rural and 2.16% urban. And that would be an additional asset management levy of $54,856.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Deputy, go ahead.
I guess I look at if this bridge needs to be done next year, then I would like to see it moved ahead a year. I mean, our tax rate is low this year. I know nobody likes paying taxes, but I don't want to see 3 bridges come in at the same time and have a tax rate of 6 or 8 or 10%. So I'd be in favor of moving this bridge ahead if it's needs to be done that quickly. Thank you.
And you're talking about putting in the 2025 budget then, this current budget.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you want to make a motion in regards to that?
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
Okay, we'll have our clerk prepare that. We'll look for a seconder.
That the B line repairs to structure number 1096 in the amount of $305,800 from the tax levy be included in the 2025 budget.
So move, deputy.
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Counselor Neeb, any discussion? Counselor Roque.
Yeah, so could we just clarify what the tax rate increase would be with what we've suggested so far, Aaron? Please?
Through you, Mayor. So including the pedestrian crossover at 34,197 from the levy, the OPP stabilization of $100,000, the B line structure of 305,800, and the roller of 52,915. The tax rate increase would be 3.57% rural and 4.24% urban.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Counselor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, we went from a fairly reasonably low rate to all of a sudden 3.57 on rural and 4.25. And so I'm just thinking in terms of if this project were to come to council like next year, if all of it were coming against the levy, or if there's some wiggle room here that part of it would go against the reserves, so that we don't hop right on up to 3.57. I'm just wondering if there's something we could do on the capital
Okay,
to reserve part.
comment, Counselor Roque.
Yeah, so earlier tonight, there was a comment about that we had reached our limit on the transportation reserve that we're to take out. I guess, can you explain that a little bit? Is there a formula that we have that we can only take so much out? And maybe with another project like this in there, is there any wiggle room with that formula for another 305,000?
Through you, Mayor, the guidance that we use is 25% of the amount that is put into the reserve the prior year is what is taken out in the following year, but is at your discretion, council's discretion to adjust that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? We have a motion on the table at this point. There's no further. Oh, Counselor Neeb, go ahead.
I guess my only concern is just looking at the asset management plan, like, 4.24 urban, 3.57 rural seems a lot until you take into account the amount of assets that are going to need to be replaced in the next 10 years and the impact that it could have on our taxpayers then. So I look at this as maybe softening the blow in the coming year and the year after that by having a rate that's 3.57, 4.24. I know just looking at some of our neighbors and the county budgets, coming out at 12% or some areas coming out higher, like we have a fairly reasonable tax rate proposal considering neighboring municipalities and also considering the services and the assets that we do have in our municipality. So I'm fine moving ahead with what's proposed and replacing the bridge structure just based on the fact that it could always be higher next year or the year after.
Thank you. And maybe a good question for staff is what are the experience of these culverts? Are they increasing a certain percentage annually, or do you have a comment, Mr. Giverson, as to what that rate might be, just the ballpark? Are they
Through you, Mayor Finch, yes, construction costs are going up considerably higher than the rate of inflation. The construction index, even a year ago, we were approaching, we saw a construction index of 17%. So year over year, I would say you're looking at least a 10% increase. So if you choose to put this in 2026, you are looking at additional costs just because of the construction pricing index increasing.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Giverson? Is there Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I look at it, the B line is, there's a lot of culverts on there that need to be replaced before we can do anything with the road. And that road itself is really bad. If anybody's driven it, it's like this, it's continuous. So I don't know what the rest of the culverts and crossing and bridges are like, but I think we're gonna need to start doing one a year, and this is just moving it up a year. So I'm in favor of this, going ahead with this. Thank you.
And Mr. Giverson, would you know when the bridge is going to be completed in Grand Bend? Because I would imagine there's traffic detouring up B line.
Through you, Mayor Finch. The bridge project, the Lambton Shores Bridge project, they are taking a pause for the summer and then going back to construction. My understanding is it is a 2025 complete in the end of 2025. But there's no detour. Naturally, traffic will go where it wants to go. But there's no agreed to, no planned detour on South Huron roads. They are have traffic down to one lane, controlled on that bridge structure. The other thing that is going to come up sooner than later is the roundabout at 21 and 83. So there's very active discussions on that right now. So pressure will be on B line. So it is in our best interest to try to address that sooner than later.
Thank you, Councilor Oak.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just looking at the capital forecast, so this one was in for 2026. There is a B line repairs to structure 1098 of 96,000. So that's just a cosmetic repair. It can't be the actual structure itself. There's engineering of 9,600 and then 96,000 the year after.
Mr. Giverson?
So through you, Mayor Finch, I wouldn't characterize it as a cosmetic repair, but it is repair, like it would be structural repairs to that culvert, not a full replacement. But it has been assessed by an engineer and determined that that can be done, and then it's good to go for another 20 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions at this time? We have a motion on the table. Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, so I'm just in light of potentially doing this project, and I know we talked about 100,000 out of the OPP reserve. Is there any appetite for taking further out of the reserve, the OPP reserve, to offset taking it to 150 instead of 100? Still is more than the 109 or 110 that has to remain in there, but just wondering.
So, and that's not part of the motion at this point. We
No,
can come
but
back
it
to it.
just,
Yeah, we can
just
certainly
as
come back.
part of the overall discussion, whether we go ahead with this bridge.
Yep, so let's
or-
work on the just recommendation right now that the deputy has moved. And if you just want to read that recommendation again, please, then we can vote on it and move to your question.
That the B line repairs the structure number 1096 in the amount of $305,800 from the tax levy be included in the 2025 budget.
So it's moved and seconded. Is there further discussion, Councillor? Rowe?
Yes, so the discussion I had was if we were to look at something else to make that decision with this bridge, with this recommendation that we have on the floor right at the moment, whether that could be done at the same time. And just to see what, because if we commit to this, we're committing to 3.57 and 4.24 currently. And then so I'm just wondering if there's a way to maybe adjust that a bit.
Ms. Masuda calls some comment.
Through the mayor, I just have to get confirmation from the acting treasurer, but council could decide to take some funds from the transportation capital reserve, like 100 or 150 out of there rather than the OPP stabilization fund. Is that not correct?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor? Rowe?
So I guess, thank you, Mayor. Just wondering then if we were to take 100,000 out of the transportation reserve to put towards this project, what that number would look like as far as the tax rate.
Through you, Mayor Finch, adjusting the B-line structure repair to be a $205,800 impact on the levy would change the tax rate increase to 2.62% rural and 3.41% urban.
Okay, thank you. Deputy?
Thank you. I guess I look at it down the road. That reserve is we're probably going to need that reserve in our roads, especially for our bridges and the amount of road work we're gonna have later down, like maybe 3, 4, 5 years. I don't like taking it out of reserves because once we take it out, it's gone. And I understand nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't like paying them either. But I think in order to keep this municipality moving ahead, we have to keep a decent tax rate to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further then? Councillor Vaughn?
Yeah, I would be more amenable to this motion if we actually were going to take $100,000 from the capital and bring the rates down to 2.62 and 3.41 rural and urban respectively. And I realize that this still constitutes an increase. I realize that a lot of people have been suffering over the last couple of years with high interest rates and high mortgage payments and so forth. And so I would rather see us use some of the capital. We're never going to make up for all of the asset management by this method alone, just in terms of leaning totally on our taxpayers. So I'd rather look at it year by year, not the whole $650 million we've got in assets replacement value.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Neeb.
Yes, sorry, thank you through the chair. Just the way I'm looking at it is by borrowing from the reserves or borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, because eventually we're gonna have to make up that money in that reserve. And one of the items too, we talk about in our asset management plan is generational equity. And I think it behooves us to look at trying to even out the tax rate increases. And if we consistently underspend, we are not going to do anything for the people down the road. We're not going to assist them. And yes, it's going to be hard to get caught up and it's going to take a long time to make up, but we have to try because inevitably it's going to put more and more pressure on the taxpayer. So that's why I'm in favor of the increase as it is, because again, it still is looking pretty good considering other municipalities and other jurisdictions. So that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? If there's no amendments to the motion, we have a motion on the table. If there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? And 2, 3, 4 opposed? Are you a hand up? Okay, who's opposed here, please? Are you opposed, Councilor? You're not opposed. Okay. Thought you were opposed. Okay, all in favor. Let's do the all in favor. Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, anything further on where we are here? Okay, Mr. Carlson.
Through the mayor, if the acting treasurer could maybe give us what they approximately dollars in municipal taxes for 2.62, oh no, sorry, 3.57 rural and 4.25 urban would be.
Through the mayor, the annual increase on $100,000 of residential assessment would be $22.33 rural and $30.46 urban. The annual increase on $285,001, which is the average residential assessment in South Huron, would be $63.70 rural and $86.87 urban. 86.87.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Any comments? Councilor?
Yes, you know, it is definitely the tax rate is above the rate of inflation today. And I think, you know, we have to be slightly above the rate of inflation or we're going behind. There's no question about that. As Councillor Neep said, you know, we can't rob Peter to pay Paul because eventually assets have to be replaced. And I think the budget has a lot of good things in it as far as capital replacement or upgrades. And so it's not ideal, the number that we want, but it's better than when we first started the process with some of the money that's come in from the upper tiers. But they've also offloaded some things, and I'm not happy with some of the offloading that's happened as well. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to move into the next steps here. Is there anyone who wants to do reconsideration of anything that we've already discussed? Any comments from members of council? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question, underwater. Maybe Mr. Giverson could explain the new line going to POG. Just an explanation would help me a lot in understanding that part. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Giverson.
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. So that project is to replace and upgrade the water main. So there's a 4-inch water main currently on Grand Bend Line from Beeline. Well, it continues all the way down to Greenway. So this proposed project is to replace it and enlarge it so it can provide fire protection for any potential development around the Grand Bend Airport, not just the former POG property, but for the Bentech property, was a proposed industrial subdivision just south of the Bentech property, and there's current development proposed in behind on the private road. So there had been a number of this project had been on the books for a long time, waiting for some type of development activity to occur in that area. which in recent years there has been a considerable amount of activity. Some developments occurred, some that is already planning to happen. It's at the stage where it's very close to getting site plan approval. The Bentec property in particular, we've had very active discussions about further development on that property, but the restriction is fire flow. So this larger main will deliver fire flow from the municipal water system. If we enlarge it from Beeline and to Highway 81, kind of around the bend, out to in front of Bentec. So that is why we had proposed to do the project with DC charges money, because that's what that money is collected for. This project has been in the DC charges background study for at least 2, maybe 3 background studies. So that's the idea, is to fund the oversizing to assist with development, that we're getting very active development inquiries for that area.
Deputy?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. Okay, go back to staff. Any other comments from staff?
I don't have any comments, but I do have a draft resolution for council consideration if this is where we're at. Let South Huron Council approve the 2025 draft operating and draft capital budget, reflecting a 3.57 tax rate increase for Ward 1 and 3, and that's approximately $63.70 in municipal taxes for the average residential assessment in South Huron, and a 4.24, just wanted to confirm that, tax rate increase for Ward 2, representing approximately $86.87 in municipal taxes for the average residential assessment in South Huron, as presented and amended by resolutions for adoption at the council at the December 16th regular council meeting.
Thank you for that. So do we have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Need moves. Oh, sorry.
Just
Sorry,
confirming, you said 3.57 for rural, or did you say
3.57 for rural and 4.24 for urban.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Need. Moved, so moved. Is there a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor, any discussion? We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no discussion, I'll call a question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Ms. Masuha-Carlson.
That South Huron Council hereby adjourns at 5 p.m.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Need. No discussion. Call the question. All in favor?